Economic collapse doesn't destroy money first. It destroys trust. And when trust breaks, most people realize too late that everything they depended on was built on promises, not value. History proves this pattern over and over again. And the Bible warned about it long before economists gave it names. People don't lose everything because they're irresponsible. They lose everything because they hold the wrong assets when the rules of money change overnight. Salaries, savings, and safe systems feel solid, until they aren't. And when that moment arrives, effort alone can't save what wasn't positioned wisely. Scripture never teaches blind faith in financial systems. It teaches preparation, stewardship, and discernment. Some assets survive collapse, others go to zero every single time. The difference isn't luck, it's understanding how value actually works when economies break. If you like our content, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description. In this video, you'll see the 6 assets that survived economic collapse and why most people lost everything. Once you understand this pattern, you stop reacting to fear and start positioning with wisdom. The pattern of economic collapse. Nobody escapes. Economic collapse never arrives like a lightning strike. It comes like a slow leak, almost polite at first, so polite that most people ignore it. A theologian who understands money will tell you this pattern has repeated since ancient kingdoms began debasing their coinage. Empires don't fall because people stop working. They fall because trust in the system quietly dies. And when trust collapses, business collapses with it. That's why Scripture warns, again and again, not to anchor life to systems built by men. The Bible already described this long before economists gave it names. In Haggai 1:6, the prophet says people earn wages only to put them in bags with holes. That's inflation before inflation had a word. People are working harder, making more money, yet somehow becoming poorer. This isn't accidental, it's structural. Whenever leaders spend beyond restraint, dilute value, and promise stability they can't deliver, collapse becomes a matter of timing, not chance. History confirms the pattern with ruthless consistency. First, authority expands spending. Then debt grows faster than productivity. Soon after, new money is created to cover old promises. At first, this feels like relief. Businesses stay open, salaries rise, markets feel strong. But Proverbs 22:7 quietly reminds us that the borrower always becomes servant to the lender. Eventually, the cost of that debt shows up everywhere: prices, rent, food, and stress. Most people lose everything not because they're lazy or foolish, but because they trust continuity. They assume tomorrow will look like yesterday. Jesus warned against this mindset in Matthew 7 when he spoke about houses built on sand. Systems look solid until the storm hits. When money rules change overnight, salaries don't protect you, savings don't save you, and credentials don't shield you. Only preparation does. This is where wisdom separates from intelligence. Wisdom anticipates patterns before pain arrives. Joseph understood this in Genesis 41 when Egypt experienced 7 years of abundance, followed by collapse. He didn't panic during the famine because he positioned resources during stability. That's a business principle rooted in Scripture. Prepare when others are comfortable, not when they're desperate. Collapse doesn't destroy everyone equally. It exposes who planned ahead. Once this pattern is understood, the real question shifts. It's no longer, will collapse happen? But what actually holds value when it does? Because when money fails, some assets vanish instantly, while others quietly absorb the shock. That distinction is where survival begins, and it leads directly to the first asset that has outlived every monetary system in history. Asset 1: precious metals and the illusion of stability. Precious metals are often misunderstood because people expect them to behave like modern investments. They look at gold and silver and ask, "What's the yield?" Or, "How much money does it make?" That question already reveals the problem. Gold was never designed to make money. It was designed to keep money from dying. In biblical terms, it is a measure of weight and value, not a promise built on trust in institutions. Scripture consistently treats gold as a store of value, not a growth engine. In Genesis, gold is mentioned as early as Eden, described as good before economies, banks, or governments ever existed. In Proverbs 16:16, wisdom is said to be better than gold, not because gold is useless, but because gold already represents stability. When kingdoms rise and fall, gold doesn't change its nature. Only the rulers do. History proves this principle with brutal clarity. During every major currency collapse, paper promises evaporated while precious metals quietly preserved purchasing power. When governments printed more money to fund spending, gold didn't need to react. It simply remained scarce. That scarcity is the entire point. No central authority can decide to create more gold overnight to rescue bad policy decisions. Many people criticize gold because it just sits there. That's exactly why it works. Insurance is boring until the day everything catches fire. In business terms, precious metals are not growth assets. They are balance sheet protection. They exist to neutralize systemic risk, not to outperform stocks during good times. Expecting gold to behave like equities is like expecting a fire extinguisher to heat your house. There's also a spiritual lesson hidden here. In Exodus, the Israelites used gold to build both the tabernacle and the golden calf. The material itself wasn't evil. The problem was misplaced trust. Gold protects wealth, but it cannot save a soul. That distinction matters. Wise stewardship means using gold as a tool, not a god, a hedge against collapse, not a substitute for faith or purpose. Once someone understands that precious metals are protection, not profit, their role becomes clear. They are the foundation layer, the asset you hope never has to prove its value, but always does when money systems break. And yet, as powerful as gold is, it cannot move on its own across borders. That limitation opens the door to the next asset, one built not on scarcity alone, but on flexibility and access. Asset 2, foreign hard currency and the power of optionality. When a domestic currency starts to fail, the first thing people lose is choice. They can still work, still run a business, still try to make money, but they're forced to do it inside a shrinking system. Foreign hard currency restores optionality. It gives a person the ability to step outside a collapsing framework and operate where rules still function. In biblical terms, it's the difference between being trapped in Egypt and having a path through the wilderness. The Bible never commands loyalty to a single currency or kingdom. In fact, Scripture constantly reminds believers that earthly systems are temporary. Jesus himself operated under Roman rule, yet he wasn't financially dependent on Rome's stability. When taxes were demanded, provision came from a coin in a fish's mouth. The lesson wasn't about magic, it was about sovereignty over systems. Hard currency works the same way. It removes dependency on one failing authority. History shows this pattern everywhere. When local money collapses, people instinctively reach for stronger currencies. Not because they love them, but because survival requires them. This isn't speculation, it's self-preservation. In business environments, access to stable currency allows trade, pricing, and planning to continue even as the domestic system erodes. Without it, every transaction becomes a gamble. What most people misunderstand is that foreign currency isn't about predicting which money will win. It's about diversification of trust. Proverbs 27:12 says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge." Holding multiple currencies is refuge in monetary form. It acknowledges uncertainty without panic. It accepts that no single system deserves blind loyalty. There's also a practical discipline here. Hard currency must be accessible, not theoretical. In every collapse, those who relied on banks to release their money were trapped by controls and restrictions. Those who held liquidity outside fragile systems maintained freedom. This isn't rebellion. It's stewardship. Money that cannot be reached when needed is not protection. It's decoration. Foreign currency creates mobility, but it still depends on functioning economies elsewhere. It buys time, not immunity. It allows transition, not permanence. That's why wise positioning never stops with currency alone. Once optionality is restored, the next question becomes ownership, not of money but of productive systems that generate value regardless of which currency is used. And that leads directly to the next asset. Asset 3, productive businesses and export-based income. When currencies fail, ownership tells the truth faster than prices do. A productive business isn't a number on a screen. It's a system that turns effort into value. That distinction matters when money is being diluted. In Scripture, wealth is repeatedly associated with land, labor, and production, not with promises. Ecclesiastes reminds us that profit comes from the earth being worked, not from paper claims detached from reality. Stocks confuse people because they think of them as speculation. Biblically and economically, a share represents ownership. Ownership of factories, logistics, brands, technology, and relationships. When a currency collapses, those assets don't disappear. They simply get repriced. That's why in many collapses, stock markets rise in nominal terms while people feel poorer. It's not growth, it's currency decay revealing itself. The critical difference is where revenue comes from. A company that earns only local money suffers even if its stock price rises. But businesses with export income or foreign-denominated revenue gain strength. Their costs fall in real terms while revenues remain stable. This is why Joseph didn't store coins in Egypt. He stored grain. Grain was exportable, tradable, and essential. He controlled production, not currency. Modern parallels are easy to see. Businesses involved in commodities, energy, agriculture, logistics, software services, and global manufacturing often survive devaluation better than domestic service firms. They sell value internationally. They convert effort into hard money. This isn't about chasing hype stocks. It's about understanding what actually produces cash flow when systems fracture. There's also a mindset lesson here. Many people seek safety in wages, not ownership. But wages are fixed claims on a collapsing system. Ownership adapts. Proverbs 13:22 speaks of inheritance, not income. Ownership transfers value across generations and across monetary regimes. It bends instead of breaking when rules change. Productive businesses protect purchasing power, but they require discernment. Not every company survives collapse. Only those tied to real demand beyond local borders endure. This forces a deeper question. When systems fully freeze and formal markets stall, what still moves value hand to hand? The answer isn't elegant, but it's ancient. And it pulls us into the next asset. Asset 4. Essential goods barter and short-term survival value. When money systems seize up, value doesn't disappear. It changes form. Markets don't stop, they reroute. In moments of collapse, people don't ask what's profitable. They ask what's useful. Scripture reflects this realism. In times of famine and siege, the Bible speaks less about coins and more about bread, oil, water, and shelter. Utility becomes currency when trust in money evaporates. Barter emerges not because it's efficient, but because it's functional. When formal systems fail, informal systems rise overnight. Essential goods become temporary stores of value precisely because they meet immediate human needs. This is why Proverbs praises the ant, not for hoarding, but for preparing. Preparation isn't fear, it's foresight applied to reality. From a business perspective, essentials behave differently from luxury items during crises. Demand for non-essentials collapses first. Demand for food, medicine, fuel, hygiene, and basic tools becomes inelastic. These goods trade regardless of currency. They move even when banks close. That's not theory. It's observable behavior across every modern collapse. However, this asset class has limits. Consumables are powerful in short windows but weak over long timelines. They're meant to be exchanged, not stored indefinitely. This is why wisdom avoids extremes. Hoarding goods without a plan creates decay, loss, and inefficiency. Ecclesiastes reminds us there is a time for every purpose, including when to hold and when to release. The biblical principle here is the stewardship under pressure. Joseph didn't consume Egypt's grain stockpiles himself. He distributed them strategically. Goods preserved life, but structure preserved order. In the same way, essential goods provide tactical liquidity, not wealth, but leverage, when systems freeze and people are desperate to transact. Yet essentials alone can't rebuild wealth. They stabilize moments, not futures. Once immediate survival is secured, value must anchor itself somewhere more permanent, something that produces continuously without being consumed. That's where history shifts again, away from exchange and toward production rooted in the most basic human need of all. Asset 5 and 6, land, food production, and why most people lost everything. When systems collapse completely, the question shifts from money to survival, and survival always begins with food. Land that produces nourishment has outlived every empire in history. Scripture is unmistakably clear on this. From Genesis onward, land is tied to blessing, provision, and continuity. Wealth wasn't measured in coins first, but in fields, herds, and harvests. Currency came later. Calories came first. Agricultural land holds value because it produces something humans cannot opt out of needing. People can delay buying clothes, electronics, or services, but they cannot delay eating. In times of collapse, this reality reasserts itself violently. Those who control food production retain leverage, even when formal economies fail. This is why famine is used as a weapon in Scripture. Because food control equals power, but land is not a perfect asset. It is immobile, visible, and exposed to authority. Governments know where land is. They can tax it, regulate it, or seize it. History is filled with examples where landowners survived inflation but were crushed by policy. This reveals a deeper truth. Not all real assets are equally protected. Ownership without legal protection becomes vulnerability. This is where most people lost everything. They trusted proximity instead of portability. They stored wealth in assets that couldn't move, adapt, or hide when rules changed overnight. Jesus warned about this in Luke 12 when he spoke of the rich fool who built bigger barns but failed to anticipate disruption. Abundance without foresight becomes a liability under pressure. Wise stewardship balances production with protection. Land that produces exportable goods, operates under strong property rights, or is held through resilient structures survives far better than land trapped inside failing jurisdictions. In business terms, location and governance matter as much as productivity. Ownership must be paired with wisdom, not sentiment. Once this final layer is understood, a sobering realization settles in. Collapse doesn't destroy wealth randomly. It destroys concentration, rigidity, and blind trust. Those who lost everything didn't all make bad decisions. They made singular ones. And that realization quietly reframes everything that came before it. Everything you've learned here points to one unavoidable truth. Financial collapse doesn't erase value. It exposes where value was never real. History, scripture, and experience all agree on this. Those who survive aren't reacting in panic. They are positioned in wisdom. They understand that money is a tool, business is a system, and stewardship is a responsibility, not a suggestion. Ask yourself honestly, if pressure revealed your financial structure tomorrow, would it hold? Are you relying on income streams that depend on fragile systems, or are you building assets that function regardless of which currency dominates? Proverbs teaches that the wise see danger ahead and prepare. Preparation is not fear, it's obedience applied to reality. Write in the comments, "I am building assets," and watch how this powerful declaration begins to shift the course of your business and your finances from this day forward. If this message challenged you, encouraged you, or gave you clarity, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and stay with us as we continue to reveal biblical financial principles that help you protect what matters and build wisely in uncertain times.